Hello, everyone. Today I have for you a golden oldie sci-fi subject. Many of you will recognize the Jupiter 2 spacecraft as it appeared in the original Lost in Space TV show. The show was a bit cheesy and often a little too humorous, but we all loved it anyway. It was just a lot of fun. I built this model in 2016 using the beautifully detailed Polar Lights kit. I also made a video about this model right after I completed it. I thought this was an interesting enough subject to be worth revisiting. This version of the video contains footage from the 2016 edition, but has been given a totally new soundtrack and has been enhanced with a few still photos to provide details not shown in the original edition of the video. This video begins by looking at the external details of my Jupiter 2 vignette. My Jupiter 2 model sits on a display base made from an 11 by 14 inch acrylic box-type picture frame, sprayed over with 2 coats of Krylon flat black. The simple alien landscape consists of colored craft sand, a real rock in the background, and some plastic aquarium plants. It gives it that cheesy sort of feeling that you got from the sets they used on the TV show. The Polar Lights kit includes fully detailed upper and lower decks inside the ship. While the kit builds into a great static model, I decided to add a little life to it by installing electronically driven LED lighting. Before installing any lighting, I light-proofed the entire ship to prevent light from leaking through the plastic hull or from one area to another inside. This was done by spraying 2 coats of Krylon flat black paint onto interior and exterior surfaces as needed. Some parts had to be carefully masked off before spraying on the flat black undercoating. A prime example is the engine pod part. Each individual light port had to be masked inside and out. For this job, I used 3M flexible plastic masking tape. The first lighting feature I installed was a chaser board specifically made to provide the rotating lighting effect for the Jupiter 2's engine pod. This photo shows the chaser board installed in the engine pod after the pod was attached to the lower hull. This is what the engine pod lighting effect looks like. The chaser board actually provides 2 speeds. This is the slower speed. It was intended to represent the engine being used during a landing. The higher speed was meant to represent traveling in space. While you're looking at the bottom of the Jupiter 2, I want to point out something. There are 4 chaser boards driving the interior lighting effects, plus 2 12-volt LED strips, as well as the engine pod chaser. The internal chaser boards and lighting strips are powered by an 8-volt AC adapter, with its wires located inside the display base. However, you'll notice there are no wires visible between the Jupiter 2 and the display base. If the wires for all those circuits were showing, the Jupiter 2 would have ended up with a really serious case of ugly. So, how did I connect the Jupiter 2's internal electronics to their power source inside the display base? Easy. I drilled out the landing legs and ran all the wiring through the lower hull into the landing legs and through to holes drilled into the top of the display base. The result is a very neat, clean display. The next feature I'll show you is the cabin lighting. A 12-volt LED lighting strip on either side of the clear dome in the top half of the hull provides the ship's basic interior lighting. These two LED strips don't need to blink or to chase around, so they're hooked directly into the AC power supply with a toggle switch controlling their on-off state. From the outside of the ship, this is what that interior lighting looks like. If I turn off my room lights, you'll get a really good idea of just how bright the Jupiter 2's cabin lighting really is. The same toggle switch that activates the Jupiter 2's overhead lights controls a bright white 12-volt car headlight LED at the center of the navigation console. This LED is so bright that its light is visible right through the clear dome at the top of the ship. This made it unnecessary to rig separate lighting for that dome. We'll stay outside the Jupiter 2 for now and look at the next lighting feature, the stasis pods. The Robinson family were supposed to make their trip in stasis to conserve the ship's limited life support resources. I rigged each stasis tube with a 5mm blue LED. The 6 LEDs were wired to a chaser board so they would light up in sequence. Activating the stasis pods changes the interior lighting considerably, and from the outside of the ship, the overall interior lighting effect looks like this. Now that should give you a good idea of what the Jupiter's interior lighting looks like when seen through the ship's front window. Now I'll take the top off the Jupiter and show you the detailed lighting effects inside the upper deck. By the way, in order to have room to install the chaser boards to light the interior of the ship, I had to discard the entire lower deck assembly. It's no great loss, as this area wouldn't be easily accessible in any case. Before I get to the interior lighting, here's a quick look at some of the upper deck details inside the Jupiter 2. You can see the navigation console at the center of the deck. Behind the nav console, there are detailed out hatches, the elevator cage, ladder rungs on the walls. A minor flaw in the Polar Lights kit is that there are no holes in the upper deck below the ladder rungs, so there's no passage through to the lower deck. Also, there's no hole under the elevator cage. Same problem. Oh well, it's not a big deal, just a silly little design flaw. Off to the right, we see the stasis tubes. I didn't want light coming through the tops of these clear tubes, so I covered those tops with metal tape. This light proofs the top of the tubes and provides a shinier finish than silver paint would have. Each tube is lit from below by a 5mm blue LED, connected to a chaser board so that they light up in sequence. Here's how that lighting effect looks. Even with full room lights on, the tubes are very bright. Notice how the tubes illuminate the wall panels behind them and reflect off the shiny metal caps on the adjacent tubes? Moving along, we come to the flight control area. Each of the three control stations are fully illuminated with flashing lighting controlled by a chaser board. The radar screens on each console were easy to light. Each has a 2mm LED or two installed right under it. Simple. Lighting the black vertical parts of the consoles was a bit more challenging. The tiny lights on these areas are lit by colored fiber optic strands. Each light you see is a separate fiber optic strand. The fiber optic strands are bundled and connected to LEDs on a chaser board. By the way, these fiber optic strands are just 0.5 inches in diameter, just as small as the lights on the vertical console panels. By using pre-colored fiber optic strands, I eliminated the need to have different colored LEDs. I can light all of these strands with simple white LEDs on the chaser board controlling the lighting sequence. Moving further to the right, we come to the monitor station. I did a very simple lighting effect here, using one red and one blue 3mm LED right behind the overhead view screen. These are driven by a random sequence chaser board that varies their flashing pattern. Moving even further to the right, we arrive at the computer wall. Notice the high-tech tape drive and the navigation panel? They don't light up. Talk about retro. When was the last time any of us saw a computer with a tape drive? Oh dear. Anyway, I'm just guessing, but the nav panel seems to be some sort of gyro stabilizer system. Like I said, it doesn't light up. Check out the computer panel on the left end of the wall. Is it just me, or does this look like it was hijacked from Irwin Allen's Seaview submarine in the Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea TV show? This entire checkered wall flashes with moving LED lighting delivered through 54 heavy clear fiber optic strands. Here's a quick look behind the computer wall, showing you the 54 strands of fiber optic that light up the computer grid. These cables are connected to white LEDs on a chaser board in random mode, so that the pattern keeps changing on the grid, making the lighting much more interesting than if the LEDs were simply chasing one behind the other. Here's how that looks. That covers all the upper deck lighting features. This version of the Jupiter 2 is from Polar Light's 1/48th scale kit. I understand they also put out a 1/35th scale version. I can only imagine how much fun I would have had if I had one of those, with so much more space for installing LEDs or fiber optics in places I couldn't easily access on this kit. Before I end this video, here's another look at the outside of my Jupiter 2. I hope you enjoyed this presentation. Check Sci-Fi Dragon Net to find an article and still photos of this Jupiter 2 model. Thanks for watching. So long for now.